A Japanese soldier demanded an American soldier to lift a 60-kilogram log, but prolonged hunger had already left him exhausted. In the end, he barely managed to lift the log with all his strength. The Japanese soldier next to him told his subordinates that if he dared to put down the log, he would be shot on the spot. The soldier's legs began to tremble, but he did not dare to put the log down. He was not afraid of death. He was defending his dignity. As time passed, the soldier held on with willpower for a long time, and his comrades were impressed by his perseverance. Looking at him with admiration, even the Japanese officer's face gradually changed from arrogance to fear. At this moment, all the prisoners of war put down their work and came to cheer him on. The man understood in his heart that he now represented not just himself, but the courage of a nation and a people. He looked at the enemy with determined eyes, telling himself to survive, as living would make these enemies feel fear. He used all his strength to lift the wooden stake high, unleashing a primal force. His name is Louis, born in 1917 in California, USA. From a young age, he was a mischievous child, but he had one skill. He could run very fast. With this skill, he could always get away unscathed after causing trouble. His biggest hobby was peeking under girls' skirts while watching competitions, enjoying both without missing a beat. But that day, he was caught by the administrator. He skillfully jumped over the railing and started running, but this scene was witnessed by his brother, who was training. His brother immediately recognized Louis's extraordinary talent and invited him to join the school's track team. However, Louis refused because everyone thought he was a bad kid and no one respected him. He wasn't as outstanding as his brother, but his brother directly told him,
"You train and fight way harder than those other guys." I do.
Since then, Louis became unstoppable, winning first place every time. With his outstanding performance, he was quickly selected for the national team to participate in the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Before leaving, his brother reminded him once again,
"Louis, the moment of pain is worth a lifetime of glory. Remember that."
Soon the Olympics began, but when facing world-class athletes, Louis still seemed to have some gap, and he was left in the last position. His family listened to the broadcast, feeling very nervous for him. But in the final lap, Louis showed incredible explosiveness, not only surpassing one opponent after another, but also breaking the world record. Everyone was happy for him. From being considered a bad kid to a moment of glory in the spotlight, Louis underwent transformation after transformation. At this moment, Louis was filled with hope for life. However, the good times did not last long, as World War II broke out at this time. As a passionate young man, Louis resolutely chose to enlist and became an Air Force bombardier. But during a mission, the plane malfunctioned and crashed into the sea, and only 3 people survived. Now the lifeboat was their only hope for survival. They gathered all the food and water, and to last longer, Louis precisely calculated the daily intake, as this would allow them to hold on a bit longer, waiting for the rescue team to arrive. But even by the 7th day, the rescue team still hadn't come. Now all the food was gone, and they had to face hunger, lack of water, high temperatures, and storms. They drifted at sea for 15 days. Just when everyone was in despair, a large bird suddenly flew over. Louis slowly raised his hand and seized the opportunity to grab it. The 3 of them quickly subdued it together, but the taste was so awful that they vomited before even eating it. The taste of the seagull was too fishy for them to eat, so they used it to fish, and they actually caught one. To survive, the man caught a shark from the sea with his bare hands and stabbed it to death, finally having a full meal. When they were thirsty, they collected rainwater from the sky. In the blink of an eye, they had been drifting at sea for 27 days. Suddenly, a plane appeared in the sky, but the 3 of them no longer had the strength to shout, so they could only fire their last signal flare. Before they could even rejoice, they were met with merciless bullets. The 3 of them immediately jumped into the sea to hide, but the sea was full of sharks. Fortunately, the blood from the hit shark made the enemy think they had hit their target, so they turned away, allowing them to escape. When they climbed back onto the lifeboat, they found it was riddled with holes, so they had to pump air and desperately patch it up, almost getting bitten by a shark in the process. After an unknown amount of time at sea, one comrade ultimately couldn't make it and had to stay here forever. They gave their comrade a burial at sea. Time reached the 45th day of drifting in the ocean. The once strong American soldiers were now just skin and bones. Just as they were preparing to face death, a massive dark shadow loomed over them. They thought hope had arrived, but it turned out to be another abyss. Soon they were sent to the enemy's prisoner of war camp, a place even more brutal than they had imagined, because inside the camp was a Japanese commander named Watanabe, known as the demon of the camp. Although he appeared harmless, in reality, he was a cruel demon who would devour people without leaving a trace. Louis merely glanced at him in the crowd and was immediately pulled out and struck with a club. Yet Louis resiliently got back up. Seeing Louis' stubborn character, Watanabe grew even more fond of him. The next day, during roll call, when it was discovered that Louis was once an athlete, he immediately arranged for Louis to compete with his subordinates. However, long-term hunger and depression had already left his body malnourished, and he collapsed from exhaustion before completing a lap. Ultimately, Louis lost the race, but Watanabe did not intend to let him off easily, and came over to give him a beating, while his comrades could only watch helplessly. In the days that followed, Watanabe became increasingly perverse. Whenever Japan lost a battle, he would rush to the prison to vent his anger on Louis. One day, Louis finally couldn't take it anymore and told his companions that he wanted to perish together with Watanabe. But his comrades directly told him that even if he sacrificed his own life, he couldn't kill him. Only by living well would he have the chance to truly defeat him. That day, Louis was taken to the city to feast, and only after he was full did he learn that the Japanese high command had discovered his identity as an athlete. They hoped he would read a prepared script on the radio to shake the morale of the American troops. If he complied, he could enjoy feasting every day like the soldiers behind him and wouldn't have to return to the prisoner camp. In the face of national and ethnic righteousness, Louis refused without hesitation. He would rather go back to endure Watanabe's torture than live a life of compromise here. Thus, Louis was taken back to the prisoner of war camp. But this time Watanabe did not hit him. Instead, he had his men tie Louis's hands and then made all the prisoners line up, each required to step forward and punch Louis. He wanted to completely break Louis's will. The leading soldier hesitated, but Watanabe then grabbed an injured man and struck him hard. Do not go. But Watanabe then grabbed an injured person and hit him hard. To prevent his comrade from suffering further, Louis asked his comrade to act quickly. The comrades had no choice but to helplessly hit Louis one by one in the face. Louis was beaten to the point where he couldn't stand, so Watanabe ordered 2 soldiers to hold him up and continue the beating. They beat him from morning until the sunset, but no matter how Watanabe tortured him, Louis refused to give in because he knew that staying alive was the greatest revenge against Watanabe. That day, Watanabe came to Louis and told him some good news. He was being transferred away for a major, and he came to say goodbye to Louis, asking if it was a good thing or a bad thing. Seeing this demon finally leave, all the prisoners of war breathed a sigh of relief, but the good times didn't last long. As the American military continued to advance, the POW camp was bombed by the Americans. Everyone thought the war was about to end, but what awaited them was another POW camp. In this icy and snowy place, with the freezing cold, they had to dig earth holes here. Just as all the soldiers gathered, Louis witnessed a terrifying scene. When Louis saw Watanabe again, he was so frightened that he collapsed to the ground. When Watanabe saw his old friend, he didn't hold back at all and immediately hit him with a club. They had to work here for over 10 hours every day, and a slight mistake could lead to falling to their death on the spot. He wanted to gradually destroy the willpower of these American soldiers to completely break their spirits. Watanabe also ordered his men to deliberately push Louis down the stairs, causing him unbearable pain. But Louis could only endure and continue working. As the Japanese army faced repeated defeats on the battlefield, Watanabe, in order to vent his anger, once again found Louis and made him lift a 60-kilogram wooden beam. Every day, with the intense work and not enough food, Louis's strength was already exhausted, but he still struggled to lift the log and slowly placed it on his shoulder. However, Watanabe told him to lift it over his head. And he told his subordinates that if he dared to put it down, they should shoot him. Louis's legs began to tremble, and his consciousness became blurred, but he knew he must not fall. He wasn't afraid of dying. He was afraid of the American spirit being destroyed by the enemy. Everyone started watching him, cheering him on. At this moment, Louis Dewey was not fighting alone, but for the dignity of a country, a nation. Watanabe began to feel fear. He couldn't believe the man before him had such strong willpower. Despite tormenting him for so long, this man's willpower remained so strong. Louis's body could be defeated, but his indomitable willpower could not be overcome. Not even one person's willpower can be conquered, let alone a nation's.